Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
I didn't even know when my hands started trembling. Maybe it was when I shoved the last of Jonathan's clothes into the suitcase, or when I finally closed the front door behind us, leaving the mansion that had been my prison for far too long. The city streets blurred as I drove, the sound of the car's engine a steady hum beneath the weight of my thoughts. My son, Jonathan, was asleep in the backseat, blissfully unaware of the storm we were fleeing from. My heart pounded with every mile that took us further from Remy, my husband, and the life I no longer wanted. Jonathan's soft snores were a reminder of why I had to leave. For him. For us. The moment I found out about Remy's latest affair was like the final crack in a dam that had been holding back my emotions for years. It wasn't the first betrayal, but it was the last straw. I had turned a blind eye to so much: his affairs, his cruel indifference toward Jonathan, and his constant arrogance, thinking his wealth could buy him anything, including forgiveness. I remember when I confronted him the first time. "Remy, I know about her," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, standing in the doorway of his office. He didn't even flinch. "Her? Helena, there are so many hers, I've lost track." His laugh was cold, sharp like a knife to my chest. "You've always been too fragile for this world. Maybe it's time you faced reality." His words lingered in my mind as I drove, my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel. I had no choice but to face reality now. I wasn't fragile. I was done being his toy. The house I'd found seemed too perfect, almost like a dream. A remote village, far from the city, far from Remy's influence. It was cheap, suspiciously so, but desperation clouded my judgment. I had to take it. No more questions, no more hesitation. When we arrived, the sun was just starting to rise, casting a pale glow over the small house. It was older, the wood faded, the shutters creaking in the early morning breeze. Jonathan stirred in the back seat as I pulled up the gravel driveway, rubbing his eyes as he looked at the unfamiliar surroundings. "Mom, where are we?" His voice was small, uncertain. I turned to him, forcing a smile. "This is our new home, sweetheart. Just for a while." "Mom." Jonathan's voice became quieter. "What if Dad gets mad?" I looked at him, the light of the street lamp reflected on his innocent face. "He won't be angry." I lied again, pushing the lump out of my throat. "He's going to be fine. We're going to be fine." The words didn't sound convincing, but I needed him to believe them. Maybe if I repeated them often enough, I would start believing in them too. We stepped out of the car, and that's when I saw him. Declan. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed over his chest, watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. He looked older than I expected, mid-40s, with a gaunt face and eyes that seemed too tired for his age. "You're Helena, right?" His voice was low, gravelly. I nodded. "I'm Declan. This is still my house, but I won't be here long. 6 months, maybe a year. I'll sell it to you on one condition." I hesitated. "What condition?" "I stay here until I die." His bluntness caught me off guard, and I felt a lump form in my throat. "You're dying?" I asked, not knowing how else to respond. "Terminal cancer," he replied, his tone matter-of-fact, like he was telling me about the weather. "The doctors say I've got 6 months, maybe a year if I'm lucky. I just want to die here, in peace." His words hung in the air between us, heavy with a truth I wasn't prepared for. But what choice did I have? This was the only place far enough, safe enough for Jonathan and me. And Declan, despite his eerie calmness, didn't seem dangerous. He was a man at the end of his life, searching for solitude. I nodded. "Okay, you can stay." He gave me a curt nod in return, as if we'd just completed a business transaction. "The guest room is yours. Jonathan can have the small room upstairs. I won't bother you." As we settled in that morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a simple escape. There was something unsettling about the house, about Declan, but I pushed the thoughts aside. For now, all that mattered was that we were safe. Away from Remy, away from the lies. The next morning, the unfamiliar creaks of the old house woke me before dawn. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind restless. It was too quiet here, the kind of silence that pressed down on you, making you feel every little sound. Jonathan was still asleep in the small room next door, his soft breathing the only comfort in this strange place. I forced myself out of bed and went downstairs, where the dim morning light seeped through the kitchen window. Declan was already sitting at the small table, his hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee. His hollow eyes flicked up to me as I entered, but he didn't say anything at first. "Did you sleep well?" I asked, trying to break the awkward silence. "As well as someone like me can," he replied, his voice low, almost a growl. He took a slow sip of coffee before continuing. "You'll get used to it. The quiet, I mean. It's different here than in the city." I nodded, glancing out the window at the garden that had long been abandoned to overgrowth. The house, the garden, it all felt like it had been waiting for something, or maybe someone. Declan had lived here alone for so long. I wondered what kept him going, why he had decided to sell the house at all, if it meant so much to him. "Why did you put the house up for sale?" I asked, curiosity getting the better of me. He shrugged, the movement stiff as if his body was growing tired of the simple act of moving. "I'm dying, Helena. I don't need much anymore. Thought it might be better to sell it while I still had time to sort things out." His eyes narrowed slightly, and he added, "But now I see, it wasn't just the house that needed a new life." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I busied myself with making tea. Declan's words sat heavy in the air, and I could feel the tension creeping in again, like the house itself held secrets I wasn't ready to uncover. I needed to focus on why I was here. This wasn't about Declan, it was about starting over, for Jonathan and me. Jonathan padded into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, his hair sticking up in every direction. He looked small in this big, unfamiliar space. "Morning, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair. "Did you sleep okay?" He nodded, but I could tell by the way he clung to my side that he was unsettled too. This place wasn't home, not yet. Declan watched us silently, his gaze lingering on Jonathan in a way that made me uneasy, though I couldn't quite pinpoint why. "The boy needs stability," he said abruptly. "A place where he can feel safe. You think you'll find that here?" I stiffened, his bluntness catching me off guard. "We don't have a choice," I replied, meeting his gaze. "This is the best I can do right now." Declan grunted, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. "Suit yourself. Just know this house has a history. People don't come here by accident." His words sent a shiver down my spine. There was something strange about the way he spoke, as if he knew more than he was letting on. I couldn't tell if it was just his illness talking, or if there was something more to it. As the days passed, the tension grew. I felt like I was living on edge, waiting for something to happen, though I wasn't sure what. Declan kept to himself most of the time, but his presence was always there, lingering like a shadow in the house. He didn't talk much about his illness, but I could see the signs, the way his hands trembled, the deep lines etched into his face from pain he tried to hide. One evening, as I was putting Jonathan to bed, he asked, "Mom, is Declan going to be okay?" I paused, unsure how to answer. "He's sick, sweetheart, but we're here to help him as much as we can." Jonathan frowned, pulling the blankets up to his chin. "He's sad, I can tell." I kissed his forehead, trying to soothe his worries. "I know, but we'll be okay. You'll see." But even as I said the words, I wasn't sure if I believed them. There was something off about this place, and about Declan. I just didn't know what it was yet. The early morning sun filtered through the small window of Jonathan's room, casting a soft glow on his sleeping face. As I stood by the doorway, Watching him breathe in the peaceful rhythm of sleep, my mind drifted back to the day he came into my life. He wasn't born from me, but he was my son in every way that mattered. It was 5 years ago when I first saw him, a tiny, fragile boy, barely 2 years old, sitting quietly in the corner of the adoption center. His eyes, deep brown and full of pain no child should ever know, caught mine immediately. His silence spoke volumes. The social worker had told me he had been through too much already, his parents lost in a car crash, and his only remaining relatives uninterested in caring for him. The thought of leaving him there was unbearable. "I want him," I had said firmly, and within weeks, Jonathan was mine. The adoption process had been grueling, filled with endless paperwork and questioning stares, but it was worth every moment. I never told him how much of a savior he had been to me as well. Losing my daughter, Lily, had nearly destroyed me, but Jonathan gave me purpose again. Now, as he slept, I couldn't help but wonder how much of this move was affecting him. He had already been through so much, and Remy, my husband at the time, never truly accepted him. I remember the fights, the cold looks from Remy whenever Jonathan was near. "You're too attached," Remy had said once, his voice dripping with disdain. "He's not even yours. Why do you care so much?" I had stared at him, shocked by his callousness. "He is mine," I'd snapped, anger flaring. "Blood doesn't make a family. Love does." But Remy never understood. He was too consumed by his own life, his affairs, and his lies. I discovered the truth about his affair 2 months ago. I had been heartbroken, but also strangely relieved. It gave me the clarity I needed to leave. Jonathan and I deserved better. "Mom." Jonathan's small voice broke through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. I crossed the room and sat on the edge of his bed. "Yes, sweetheart. Do you think Dad misses us?" The question stung, but I had expected it. Remy had been absent for so long that Jonathan had stopped asking about him for the most part. But every now and then, the questions resurfaced. I smoothed a hand over his messy hair. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But what I do know is that we're better off here. Just the two of us." Jonathan looked up at me, his eyes reflecting that same deep sadness I had seen in him the first day we met. "I'm glad it's just us, Mom. I don't miss him." His words were a mixture of relief and guilt. I leaned down and kissed his forehead. "Me too," I whispered, though a part of me felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle in again. I wanted to give him the world, but there were still so many things I couldn't protect him from. As I sat with him, I made a silent promise. I would make sure Jonathan grew up feeling loved and secure, no matter how much I had to give. Remy's rejection of Jonathan would not define his life. But I knew this move, this house, was just the beginning of a new chapter for both of us. It wasn't going to be easy. And there was Declan, another man, another complication. Yet, unlike Remy, Declan had shown a gentleness toward Jonathan that took me by surprise. There was something about him, something I couldn't quite understand yet, but I knew it was drawing Jonathan in. "I like Declan," Jonathan murmured, already drifting back to sleep. I stayed there for a moment, watching his eyes flutter shut. The day started like any other, with the crisp morning air filling the small kitchen as I prepared breakfast. Jonathan was in the other room, drawing something, likely another one of his elaborate spaceship designs, but my mind was elsewhere. Declan had been coughing more lately, and I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't adding up. I had reviewed his medical reports thoroughly, unable to resist slipping into my doctor's mindset. The diagnosis was supposedly terminal, but the test results didn't completely align. Something felt off, and I needed to know what. After breakfast, I found Declan sitting on the porch, staring out at the mist that hung over the valley. His face was pale, his skin too thin for a man his age, but it wasn't the look of a man nearing death. I had seen that look before, too many times. "Declan, can we talk?" I asked, sitting down next to him. His eyes flickered with curiosity, but he nodded. Sure, what's on your mind? His voice was raspy, but not weak. I took a deep breath. I've been looking at your test results. I'm concerned there might have been a mistake in your diagnosis. His brow furrowed. A mistake? What do you mean? I think there's a chance you're not as sick as they've told you. Some of the results don't add up, and there are other possibilities we haven't explored. Have you considered getting a second opinion? He sat in silence for a moment, the creases in his forehead deepening. Helena, I've been to countless doctors. They all said the same thing. I know, I said gently, but I'm not convinced they're right. What if they're wrong? Wouldn't you want to know for sure? Declan let out a slow breath, his eyes wandering to the horizon. I've made peace with it, Helena. It's not something I'm eager to revisit. I understand that, but I think you owe it to yourself to find out, I urged. You've got time. If there's even a small chance that you're not dying, shouldn't you take it? Declan turned his head to look at me, his eyes searching mine for some kind of answer. For a moment, I thought he might refuse, but then he nodded slowly. Okay, what do we need to do? Relief washed over me. I'll make a few calls. We can get some new tests done, maybe visit a specialist I know. For the next few weeks, I set the wheels in motion. I arranged for the tests, consulted with colleagues, and fought against the skepticism that came with challenging a terminal diagnosis. Declan was hesitant, but he trusted me, and slowly, he began to hope. One afternoon, as we sat waiting for the results, the tension was palpable. Jonathan was outside playing, unaware of the storm of emotions swirling inside the house. Declan leaned back in his chair, staring at the clock. You really think I'm not dying? He asked quietly. I think there's a good chance, I replied, feeling the weight of my words. And if I'm right, you've got a lot of life left to live. He smiled faintly, but his eyes remained clouded with uncertainty. It's strange, you know. I'd resigned myself to it. Now, the idea that I might have more time, it's terrifying. It's a second chance, Declan, I said softly. Not everyone gets that. Just as I finished speaking, the phone rang. My heart skipped a beat as I picked it up. The results were in. I listened carefully, my fingers gripping the receiver tightly. When I hung up, I turned to Declan. Well, he asked, his voice barely a whisper. You're not dying, Declan, I said, tears of relief filling my eyes. It was a mistake. You're going to be fine. His reaction was slow, as though he couldn't quite process the words. He looked at me and tears were running down his cheeks. In a trembling voice he asked, So I'll still live. I don't have to wait for death now. Tears sprang from my eyes as I looked at him. Of course, Declan, it's going to be okay. I'll help you make a full recovery. Helena, thank you. You have no idea what you've done for me. Declan's voice shook with excitement. But then, gradually, a smile broke across his face, a smile filled with disbelief and overwhelming joy. For the first time since we'd met, Declan looked like a man who had been given his life back. We sat in silence for a while, both of us absorbing the enormity of the moment. He was going to live. And maybe, just maybe, our lives were about to change in ways neither of us could have imagined. It was a cold morning when I finally received the divorce papers. After months of back and forth, the endless legal jargon, and Remy's attempts to control every detail, it was over. My name, printed in cold black ink, alongside his, marked the official end of our marriage. For a moment, I simply stood there, staring at the document in disbelief. I had been waiting for this, but the finality of it hit me harder than I had anticipated. Jonathan was in his room, his laughter floating through the house as he played with the toy airplane Declan had given him. I slipped the papers into the drawer, not wanting to face them just yet. I made my way to the kitchen, where Declan was standing by the window, sipping his coffee. The light framed him, casting a soft glow over his now healthier features. He noticed me and turned, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "Is it done?" he asked, his voice calm, though I could sense the curiosity behind it. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders, but also a strange emptiness in its place. "Yeah, it's done." He set his coffee cup down and walked over to me, his hand resting on my arm. "How do you feel?" I took a deep breath, trying to untangle the knot of emotions swirling inside me. I don't know. Relieved, I guess, but also scared. It's strange to finally be free of him, but there's a part of me that still feels trapped, like he has this hold over me. Declan's gaze was steady, his presence grounding me. "He doesn't control you anymore, Helena. You're free to live your life the way you want. And you've got Jonathan. You've got me." The sincerity in his words brought tears to my eyes. I wasn't used to this kind of unconditional support. Remy had always made me feel like I had to earn everything: his love, his respect, even my freedom. But with Declan, it was different. There was no manipulation, no strings attached. "I know," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I just need to learn how to believe it." He pulled me into a hug, his warmth enveloping me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to lean on someone else, to let my guard down. It was a small moment, but it felt like a turning point. I was no longer the woman who had fled in fear. I was starting to become someone new. Later that evening, as Jonathan and I sat on the porch, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink, I thought about everything that had led me here. Remy's betrayal, the lies, the suffocating control. And yet, despite all of that, I had found my way to this quiet village, to a home filled with hope and possibility. Jonathan, who had once been an afterthought in Remy's life, was now thriving. His laughter was more frequent, his eyes brighter. Declan had become a father figure to him in ways I hadn't expected. "Mom, do you think Declan will stay with us forever?" Jonathan asked suddenly, his small voice breaking the silence. I looked down at him, surprised by the question. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" He shrugged, his little hands fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. "I don't know. I just like having him here. He's different from Dad. He listens, and he cares." I smiled softly, brushing a hand through his hair. "Declan cares about us, Jonathan. And as long as he's here, he'll always be part of our lives." Jonathan seemed satisfied with that answer and returned to his drawing. As I stood there, lost in thought, Declan stepped outside, joining us on the porch. There was something in his expression, a quiet determination I hadn't noticed before. He sat beside me, his arm resting lightly against mine. "Helena," he began, his voice softer than usual, "there's something I've been wanting to ask you." I turned to face him, curious but unsure where this was going. His eyes met mine, filled with an emotion that made my heart race. "I've loved you from the moment you stepped into my life," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've given me hope, Helena. A reason to keep going when I didn't think I had one. You've brought light to my darkest days, and I don't want to imagine my life without you anymore." My breath caught in my throat as he reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. My hands began to tremble as he opened it, revealing a simple but beautiful ring. "Will you marry me, Helena?" Declan asked, his eyes never leaving mine. I stared at him, the words catching in my throat. Tears welled in my eyes, spilling over as I nodded. "Yes," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Yes, of course, I'll marry you." Before I could say anything more, Jonathan let out an excited gasp, his eyes wide with surprise. "Can I call you Daddy?" he blurted out, his voice filled with joy and hope. Declan's face softened as he turned to Jonathan. "Of course, son," he said, his voice warm with affection. "I'd be very happy to." Jonathan's face lit up with a grin so bright it could have lit the night sky. He threw his arms around Declan, who embraced him tightly, and I couldn't stop the flood of happiness that poured through me. Everything I had ever wanted, everything I had been too afraid to believe in, was standing right here in front of me. We were finally free. We were finally home.